Hi, I'm Andy Villamarzo with SBLive Sports Florida, and thank you for joining us for episode number 15 of the Coastal. It's our high school football podcast that we do weekly. We bring on a couple guests every week, and this was actually, well, John reminded me he was actually kind of upset that he was the second guest, but you know what? He's the first person that I bring around the second time around. So there's that. And no further ado, John Santucci with USA Today network. He's the recruiting expert, state expert, just covers everything. Man's everywhere, kind of just like myself. And John, lots been going on. I know that you've been everywhere. I mean, I feel like I want to jump right into it with a
Yeah.
game that you covered that got a lot of obviously reaction to it because of the ending. And that's this St. Thomas Aquinas beating Cocoa, but I guess it depends who you are. If you want to put an asterisk by that, or you want to just go ahead and say Cocoa won that game, but they'll have a loss in the one loss on their loss column. And I mean, we got to give this Cocoa team a little bit more love because nationally, I don't think, and I think you can agree, they don't get a whole ton of just praise, but we introduced them number 25 in our SBLive Sports national rankings. Kind of tell me about that game and just how you felt like that kind of helped put them more on the national pedestal.
Yeah. Before I do that, I'm just wondering, where do you have Aquinas ranked in your top 25?
They are, I think, 15.
Okay, so you're saying they're 10 spots better than Cocoa. Okay, just interesting. I'm just saying it's not my list. So, yeah, listen, I've said this before. I really do think, having seen quite a few teams around the state, I think Cocoa is, Mainland's probably going to be upset if I say this, maybe St. Augustine as well, and Buchholz, but I think Cocoa's probably the best suburban team in the state right now, and I think they're one of the top 10 or 15 teams in the state, period. And that might be a little generous, putting them in 15, saying there's 14 teams better. This is a loaded team, right? They have a really, really solid defensive front. Brady Hart's really good. Javon Boggs just committed to Ohio State. But to go back to the Aquinas game, just a bizarre finish. And I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it. The game deserved a better ending. It was one of the best games I've seen this year. Jordan Lyle from Aquinas played out of his mind. Really strong game for him. 3 touchdown runs. Javon Boggs, who I just mentioned, 4 touchdown receptions. Brady Hart, 5 touchdown passes and almost 500 yards as a sophomore, making his 3rd career start. I would love to know. I'd love to know if anybody's gone to Aquinas and thrown 505 or 493 and 5, whatever the number was. I'd love to know how many sophomores have done that, but it's a great game all around. I thought Chance Robinson from Aquinas played really well. James Madison, who's a guy that is impressed me every time I've seen him this year, played really well for Aquinas. And then, he just had a really screwy finish. It looked like with a minute 28, I think, or minute 32, somewhere in there, Aquinas is stopped on 4th down. Cocoa gets the ball. Mathematically, Aquinas can't get the ball back unless there's an offensive penalty. And they go to kneel it down, and there's some really, really screwy officiating with the clock. And basically, Aquinas is able to get the ball back. Another bizarre sequence on the punt where Aquinas, I think, had 14 men on the field and 2 of them run off. Then they got 12 guys blocking. And the referee threw the flag and then decided it was not worth calling it. So he waved it off. I don't really understand why. And eventually Aquinas wins the game with about 6 seconds left on the clock. Like I said, I want to be clear. I've said this every time, and I've had some Aquinas people kind of get in my face and say, like, oh, you didn't talk about a pass interference call in the 2nd quarter or whatever. My thing is this: there's a big difference between a judgment call, even if you think it's a bad judgment call, and just basic clock operations of when to start and stop the clock.
Right.
I absolutely 1000% do not believe in any way that Aquinas cheated. I absolutely think that Cocoa got cheated. Those two things are not synonymous, right? You can get cheated without the other team having anything to do with it. So Aquinas didn't cheat. They played the game that was in front of them. But Cocoa got cheated, and that's why they're number 25 or so on your list, and Aquinas is 15.
Well, I mean, Aquinas, obviously a team year in and year out. And I think the only other passer, John, I would say that put up anywhere close to kind of numbers, and his name isn't popping up, but St. John Bosco's quarterback, you remember, Broward Classic. That kid had, I don't know, he had like 400 yards. I mean, I don't think he had 500. So Brady Hart had a better game.
Not a sophomore playing his third game, right?
Right.
So, and I know he didn't get 5 touchdown passes.
No, and I think he threw a lot more. I don't know. They both kind of threw around the same, I think. Hart, I think, what was it, 40 passes or so, 40, 50 passes. I think St. John Bosco.
I don't remember the number, but Cocoa basically made the decision. We're not even going to try to run the ball. We're going to throw it. The other thing I was really impressed with, Cocoa's, and you saw Cocoa, I think, was that the first time you saw him last week against Seminole?
First time this season, yeah.
Yeah, so outstanding D-line play. I think that's one of the things that jumps out to me. You can't run the ball that effectively against them, which is what I was so impressed by Jordan Lyle really working to get his touchdowns, because outside of about 3 or 4 runs, they did a fairly good job of bottling him up, which is a really difficult thing to do. And I thought for most of the night, I felt like Cocoa's D-line was winning those battles, which you don't say that a lot about Aquinas' O-line, and that's not a shot to them. That's a compliment to Cocoa. So I think it's going to be, I think whoever plays Cocoa in the playoffs is going to have their hands full. I think they're a really, really, really special team this year.
Yeah, and I think just Stanford Seminole and anybody who wants to say, hey, I think we got an argument in the suburban class being one of the top teams up there with them. You got to deal with that defensive line. You got to deal with the offense, but led by Brady Hart, who's playing out of his mind. Obviously, Boggs going to Ohio State, big deal. Just to me, one of the more fluid offenses. It doesn't look like it's kind of they're off and on. They seem like once they start getting hot, they're hot, and they're going to just keep coming.
And I've had the chance to see them a couple of times. They didn't play. I'm not saying anything they wouldn't say. They didn't play well against Seminole for 3 quarters. Right. And a lot of that has to do with Seminole, by the way. That's a really good defense. I didn't even think Chasen Johnson played on Friday. UCF commit, who's a really nice player. I said UCF, right? I'm always afraid I'm going to say UFC, and I don't think you can commit to them. But they got a really good defense too. They're going to be around. I expect it to be them and Lake Mary at some point in the playoffs in 4M. But no, Cocoa's a special team this year, and I think Bishop Verot, and I actually think 2S is going to be really fun. But I think Cocoa's still the team to beat.
I'm not going to go far from Lake Mary, because this is a team you were telling me a lot about over in Cocoa. You just saw them against Mandarin. Noah Grubbs and that group just really playing high-level football, and you really like these guys. You think they can make a run in Class 4M. I mean, give me like 3 reasons, John, why you think this team they're ready, like they could take 4M.
Man, would it be bad to say Noah Grubbs' arm and Noah Grubbs' mind is 2 different things? I don't know. But listen, I think it all starts with Noah. He's a really, really special quarterback. For me, the 2 best guys I've seen live with my own eyes during the season, I'm going to say 3, and I'm going to include the spring. Lachlan Hewlett from St. Augustine. I know you saw him in Georgia. He's a kid I think is a really outstanding quarterback, headed to Wake Forest. Super accurate. I love guys that are accurate. I've seen him put it, basically on a dime from 30 yards out. I think he's really good. I think Brady Hart is going to be really, really, really special, and he's already done some really good things. For me, Noah Grubbs has the best arm talent in the state of Florida. I'm just talking pure arm talent. I think I told you this one. He had a dirty pocket against Mandarin, took 1 step into, a rush coming at him, and overthrew the receiver by about 5 yards, but not before the ball went about 52 to 57 yards in the air. It was a monster throw. He's got a cannon, and he's smart. They against Mandarin's got those really good DBs. They've got 3 Power 5 kids at least in that secondary. And he just read it. He read it perfectly. Wherever they were is where the ball wasn't, So
right.
a really, really smart quarterback. Some of the throws he made, I think you were there when I was talking to with his QB coach on Friday. There wasn't a
Yeah.
window. He threw the window open. I think the only guy that I've seen do stuff like that consistently was the guy who's at Tennessee now out of California. He's a freshman at Tennessee, and I can't remember his name, and I'm sure I'd butcher it if I tried to say it. But where he's just, you don't see a window, but he throws them open. And so uh, I really think Noah Grubbs is number one. Honestly, number two, I think would be the offensive play calling. They've got a really, really special junior running back whose name is escaping me right now. I apologize, but played great against Mandrin. But a lot of that is the play calling. He knows how to suck you in. He knows how to make you drop off. He knows how to keep you uncomfortable defensively. And so their play caller does an outstanding job of just keeping them off balance. And I think the defense, I don't know if this is a compliment as much as if it's going to sound like as much of a compliment as I mean it to be. They're going to keep everything in front of them. They're going to make enough plays that, they're going to make sure that their offense can keep getting the ball back. We saw that in week 1 against Dr. Phillips. I don't think anybody's happy you gave up 60, but you gave your offense scored 76, right? So against Mandrin, they got 5 turnovers, I think. So one of those was on special teams, but still 4 caused by the defense, 4 takeaways. You can get a couple takeaways a game with that offense. You're going to win a lot of games. And so I thought for the most part, they did a lot of things right against Mandrin. And Mandrin's a team you and I both expected to be around, late into the season, and still could be. But Lake Mary played really, really well in that game. And even Mandrin's coach after the game was like, we got whooped. There's not a lot of, you can't give up explosive plays and have turnovers and think you're going to win. And some of that, I'm sure Mandrin's looking at the film going, hey, we didn't play that well. And maybe that's true, but a lot of that is Lake Mary played really well, and I do think that, they've got a rough end to the season. I think they've got Attapopka, at Seminole, and then at end the season, if I'm doing that right.
Yeah,
if
no,
you're in the mix. You're legitimately in the mix in 4M, and I think we've got them really high up. Our list comes out in the morning, our poll, but no, I think what Lake Mary's coaching staff has done is phenomenal. They've got really, I'm going to give you a bonus one. Their receivers are the kind of receivers you want. They don't have a Jeremiah Smith.
Not many teams do.
Right. They don't have a Javon Boggs, but man, they've got a bunch of guys that are really good route runners that are really smart, and they do the right things, and they get the job done. So I think they've got a really good group around Noah Grubbs, but he's the one driving the engine, so he's really special.
And I think that win in the playoffs last year, now minus Luke Rucker for Sanford Seminole, but I just have a feeling that with that district of death, as we call it in 4M District 2, I think that win means a lot because mentally, whether, going into this second to last game or if they meet again in the playoffs, there's some kind of edge there. There's got to be that last game you remember, you could beat these guys, because in the past, this was a tough game for them. Now it's like, hey, we know we can beat them. We just got to go out and do it again.
Yeah, I completely agree. And by the way, for me, I feel like the team that comes out of Class 4M Region 1, you have to run a gauntlet to get through there. Last year it was Apopka, beating Winter Park and beating Lake Mary in the regional final, and then coming back to beat Palm Beach Central in the state semifinal, and then should have beat Columbus, I thought, in the state championship game. You're going to have to, whoever comes out of that region is going to have to beat, it's either going to be Winter Park or Mandrin or Lake Mary or Popka or Seminole. That's a who's who of the top 10. So you're going to have to be really good to win that region. I'm really, really intrigued. There's a couple regions that I look at and I'm going, man, that's going to be so much fun for us and just so horrible for those coaches to have prepare for. You and I were talking about it earlier today off camera. 3M Region 1 with Edgewater and Jones and Wekiva and Tampa Bay Tech and Armwood and Oviedo. Like, that's unfair.
Yeah.
Like that region. Region 4 rural division
Yeah.
is loaded.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
that. I don't know what your top 5 looks like. That's basically our top 5. When you're looking at Pahokee, Williston, Hawthorne, I think, is Newberry in that region? I think they are, right? Like, that's just a loaded region. It's
Oh, yeah.
unfair. It's just like whatever the regional championship game is, which on paper you'd think it would end up being Hawthorne Williston right now. I wouldn't be against seeing that as a state championship game. They've been 1 and 2 on our list all year. I think Madison County might be offended by that statement, but those two teams have been just destroying everybody.
Yeah, and I think Hawthorne, just the way they're playing right now. I mean, last game they just played, public school, Gibbs in St. Pete. Go down there, put a cool 49 points up.
Yeah.
49-13 win. CJ Ingram throws for 335 yards, 5 touchdowns. Kid's playing out of his mind. And yeah, that would be a great state championship game in Class 1 rule. I think if we could just say, hey, Williston against Hawthorne, that'd be a heck of a game. Newberry just played Williston really close. Pokey,
yeah. Right?
Yeah, I mean, Newberry just played them 24-22. I mean, only lost by 2 to Wilson. So you're absolutely right. That region is just about as interesting as any if you're looking at how much fun you want to have in the playoffs with close games, close matchups. That could definitely be one that features the state champion in that classification. I'm going to jump to one that I think we know they're going to win their classification. And no disrespect to all the other teams in Class 1M. We know Clearwater Central Catholic and these other teams are like, hey, what about us? I know the motivation's there, but Chaminade Madonna, we just got to talk about what they've been doing, because obviously through this stretch, it's not like Damian Jones put together some ho-hum kind of schedule. I mean, this thing is absolutely loaded. I mean,
Yeah.
Berkeley Catholic, crushed. Obviously beating Miami Central at Traz Powell. You were at that game. I was really jealous. I had to watch it on national television like everybody else. You got to tell me just how that was, how the atmosphere was being on the field. Obviously, this was a game that everybody was like, why don't these two teams play? Because that was, I think, all the talk we're talking about at States. We're in the press box like, why don't these two teams play? Why are they playing Bishop Gorman and some Geico National Championship? These guys should have played in a regular season. You got to see it. Just Chaminade won that game. But, I mean, kind of talk about that matchup. And, I mean, how surreal was it to finally see these two Titans go at it?
I don't think it was surreal. It to me, though, it felt, last year you and I were both at IMG Miami Central. That had a big game feel to it, but that was week 1. And I don't think we knew what Miami Central was. I think we knew they were good. I think we both expected them to win state last year. I don't know that you and I were thinking, they're going to run the table and I don't think we thought they were going to beat IMG. And then you watch the way they played and the way that I think Central dominated last year defensively. That IMG team in the second half, you look at Chaminade's offense, and you go, okay, let's see that again. The only thing that was missing was Ruben Bain, really. That would have made this one better. But and he was there, by the way. I talked to him a little bit before the game. Such a great guy. But I talked to coaches from both teams before the game, and I just said to one of them, I said, hey, what's the conversation like this week? Because I know coaches are always like, hey, the next game is the most important game, and you don't treat any game differently. And they're like, bull crap. Like you absolutely know how big this is. You know how many people are going to be watching and trying to figure out, who's the best team perhaps in the country. And,
Right.
Yeah, it's different. This is not a normal, run of the mill game. And you felt it. You felt it every time there was a big play. You felt it every time there was a big hit. It wasn't just like, hey, this is a South Florida game. It was like, hey, this is two of the best teams in the country, which it was. And the crazy thing for Chaminade, you mentioned their schedule earlier. Your first 5 weeks were all nationally ranked teams to start the season. Week 6 was Coconut Creek, which has been, I don't know how much of a surprise, because I think people in South Florida expected them to be really good, but they've been really, really good. And then obviously Gillard last week. Chaminade's really, really incredibly good. You mentioned the Bergen Catholic game. I would argue that Chaminade is not put together for 4 full quarters yet offensively. They haven't, right? They have the best, in my mind, the best receiver in the state of Florida. They have an outstanding Power 5 quarterback. They got JoJo Trader, who is dealing with an injury earlier in the season at wide receiver. You've got multiple guys that are in the slot or outside, depending on the formation, that also have Power 5 offers. You got a running back going to North Carolina. It's a really, really talented offense. A lot of teams in Florida would be ecstatic to have one of those guys.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I just think Chaminade's offense is there. It's hard to have answers. How do you have answers for 4 quarters for Jeremiah Smith, who even when he is covered is open? So yeah, I think Chaminade's really special.
I think somebody said he looks like not just college ready. He almost looks like he's like an NFL player. Like that now.
I can't remember if you were there, but it was another guy from SBLive. It was Joe Frisario, I think, who said it to me. If you put a black visor on him and you put him in an NFL training camp, he wouldn't look out of place. Physically. That's insane. Right? So, and some of the stuff he does, the one-handed catches, the 50-50 balls that he wins, he's just so impressive. For me, he's the best receiver I've seen in high school football. I don't feel uncomfortable saying that at all. I think he's that special. I think Ohio State's gonna really be praying that he keeps that commitment, because he's either going to be the next one in the line, or he's going to go to, one of these Florida schools and just make one of those fan bases ecstatically happy. But such a special player. But yeah, I think Chaminade's really good. The bizarre thing is the teams you mentioned. I know you mentioned CCC, Carrollwood Days, right there, or since we saw that, right, 28-27, I think. Or in that game, Benjamin Cardinal Newman play next week in a game that I think is going to be a lot of fun. All 4 of those teams are exceptional teams.
Yeah,
I think they're exceptional high school football teams at the 1M level. Is just unfair that you gotta figure out that Chaminade's, somebody, 2 of those teams more than likely are going to end up playing Chaminade at some point. And I'm not going to say which, because I went to 3 of the 4 schools in the spring. One of the dads one time said, "Man, if we get one more guy, I think we beat Chaminade." And I'm like, "Who's the guy? Who's the one guy that you think is coming?" Yeah, I don't know who they think it is. I don't know if it's like, hey, if we get Aaron Donald, we're okay. Like, I don't know, but I don't know, one of the Bosa brothers. I don't know who you think's coming to school that all of a sudden you're one guy away from. I'm not going to say, but I actually called somebody and I was like, and it wasn't you. I was like, dumbest thing I've heard today. I just had to call somebody and be like, somebody said this out loud, where it's like, are you kidding me? By the way, we haven't even talked about a defense that has Zaquan Patterson and Chris Ewald and the rest of those guys. And I really like Curtis Janiver, who's had some phenomenal plays. He's headed to FAU. That the Zach Crothers, who's headed to Pitt. They've got dudes on the defense. The offense just gets all the notoriety, right? But come on, just stop. Just stop. You're not one.
I think it's something of legend, John, because coaches ask me, because they're not like us where we get to go every Friday and check out a different school, and we get to see Chaminade, we get to see Central, we get to see all these teams, and they're like, are they that good? Like, are they as good as I see on Instagram or on TikTok or on whatever? Because all they get to see are these highlights that, one of us gets on a Friday night and they're looking at it like, are they that good? And I say to people, they're that good. They are as advertised. My thing with Chaminade is I say they're like the Golden State Warriors of high school football. They're like this offense. Once they get hot, I mean, these touchdowns are raining down on you like 3-pointers, and you don't know what to do because you're like, we can't stop it. We're just defenseless. We're just here. And
I'm sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say that's how it was for CCC at the Class 1M state championship last year. You remember they were, I mean, exceptional team, but they can't stop it.
CCC, I think, did a lot of things right game plan wise. They dominated time of possession, right? You want to play keep away. You want to hope that you can get those guys cold. You want to try to get first downs. Every time Chaminade touched the ball, they scored in the first half. And the one time that they have Jeremiah Smith double covered and he's not open in the end zone, Bailey basically throws the ball out of bounds and he somehow comes down with it with one of the best one-handed grabs I've ever seen in my life. Here's the thing I want to say, because, one of the things I hate is when people are like, oh, you guys who do recruiting, you don't really care about, seeing all the kids. First of all, we absolutely do. And they're like, well, Jeremiah Smith isn't that good. Jeremiah Smith is that good. You've seen him. I've seen. Here, I love telling this story. I had a coach tell me this. The coach from Florida, I'm not going to say who, brought his kid to a receiver camp at Ohio State, and Jeremiah Smith was not yet there. And so he said he's talking to Brian Hartline, who's the OC at Ohio State and has done such a great job recruiting basically every Florida wide receiver to go to Ohio State. And he goes, the coach said to Hartline, he said, hey, I haven't gotten to see Jeremiah Smith in person. Is he as good as, as everybody says he is? And he said, Hartline gave him a look like, are you stupid? And apparently Hartline told the coach he's the best receiver I've seen in like 20 or 25 years or whatever the number was. He's that good. It's so much fun to watch, and I don't know if you've ever, I'm going to compare this to baseball. Every once in a while you have a pitcher, you go way back, a guy like Dwight Gooden, Roger Clemens. I remember when Matt Harvey was really hot for the Mets. Every time he stepped on the mound, you thought you might be witnessing something really special. When you have those guys that are just having those years that's like, could he throw a no-hitter today? Could he throw a perfect game? Could I see something I haven't seen before? But every time he steps on the mound, you have that expectation. That's what Jeremiah Smith is like at wide receiver. Every time he lines up, you think you may see something you have not seen before. And that's not hyperbole. He's that special. The problem is, what do you do with him when you've got 3 other wide receivers that all have Power 5 offers? And one of them is also a 5-star in JoJo Trader. We're not even talking about him. He's really, really good,
Yeah.
So, if you've got an answer for how to stop Chaminade, let me know, but I haven't seen it. And more often than not, I feel like they stop themselves. I don't feel like the opposition's doing it to them. I just think that, it sounds stupid to say it's so easy that sometimes you just get bored, but I feel like, could be wrong, I feel like sometimes it's just not clicking for whatever reason. But like I said, imagine if they put 4 quarters together.
Imagine.
Were you at the Bergen game?
No.
Okay. But, Jeremiah Smith has 16 or 17 catches for 300 something yards. And most of that was in the first half. Just phenomenal stuff. But they're that good. For people who have not seen them, they're that good. I haven't seen every team in the country, but I would love to see them in Gorman again if we can get that. I think that they'd be itching for that rematch.
That would be a treat for all. I don't know if that would be something we'd be watching from.
Maybe not the coaching staffs, but I think for the rest of us.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I'm sure Damien and his staff would be like, not again. But hey, they're definitely, if they're equipped,
I think they embrace that. You and I were at state and we're watching that, and I don't know about you, that never felt like Chaminade was really there. And by the way, I don't know why those games keep being played out of state. 2 years ago, they went to Arizona. Last year, they go to Gorman. Let's have somebody come to Florida and, let these guys play at home, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I want to jump into a classification that me and you talked about, and I think it's driven us crazy because we're trying to figure who's the best team in it. And I think you know where I'm going because every week it doesn't fail. We're trying to go.
I've got spot that it could be. I know it ends with letter S.
Yes. Yeah. And it might
take your pick.
Yeah, it's 1S. It's that one where me and you are literally every week like, what is going on? Who is the team that's going to finally take the reins and be like, we're going to be the front runners heading into the playoffs? I don't think anyone's actually done that yet. There's some teams we think.
Week. When you go to Wekiva, which is a 3M playoff team, and you not only go toe-to-toe with them, but you beat them. You're talking about an offense that has Winston Watkins, who was just at IMG, but he's definitely the Colorado commit, one of the top receivers in the country in the 2025 class. You got Jaden Pettit on the other side, who I think is going to be really special. And a lot of people I talk to in the Southwest Florida area really, really like him and think he's going to be, kind of that next Olsen Pat Henry type, big receiver like they had last year. We said it earlier, if you get one of those guys, you're feeling pretty good, one of those Chaminade guys. Well, they might have two that are in that conversation by the time it's all said and done.
Right.
That's hard to be in 1S. I felt like I don't know about you. I really like what Cardinal Mooney's done because they've been more consistent. And their only loss was to, I want to say Riverside or Riverview. Sorry, I always get those two. I always say the wrong word. And their quarterback was hurt, and that was a good game for 3 quarters, and then it just kind of got away from. But I really like what Mooney has. Really like Teddy Foster. And then Trinity has been that team that every year there's one of these teams, right, that plays a ridiculous schedule, gets really close, but is not winning those games. And up until last week's loss to Calvary, which was lopsided. These were not lopsided. Well, CCC was, but I think CCC is that good.
Right.
Trinity just hasn't gotten the results, but they've played really well. But I feel like FBA might have sent a very loud notice to 1S last week that, hey, we won it last year for a reason. And we need to be taken seriously again. I felt like that might have been really the first time this year that a 1S program is not just played well, but gotten the win and really kind of served notice that, like, hey, we think we're going to win this thing. And I think there's multiple teams that feel that way. I don't know that I felt like there was a front runner until Friday night. And when they beat Wekiva, at least for my money, I kind of said, that's impressive. Like that caught my attention.
Yeah, I agree. That went on the road going into the Orlando area, beating a pretty good team in Wekiva. That's the most impressive one I've seen out of the 1S team. I agree with you also on Cardinal Mooney playing with Sarasota Riverview for a little bit. That kind of made me just think, man, if they could have beat them, that would have really kind of told me, okay, I think they've arrived. I think they've actually compete for. I mean, hey, they could still get there. I mean, it's not out of the realm. Maybe we get a FBA Cardinal Mooney State final. I mean, that's not something that's out of the question. It's just, hey, could they beat them? I mean, don't know. They got some Power 5 guys over there, Cardinal Mooney, Teddy Foster, obviously, and a few others. Marion Lang, I believe, is over there. So got some dudes. It's just a matter of, are they going to be able to kind of run that table and get there to Tallahassee? So
would you agree? I'm really wondering, would you agree FBA beating Wekiva is the biggest statement win we've had in 1S this season?
Yes. I think that go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, I feel like we've had weeks where all 3 of those teams have lost.
Yeah.
At least one. I think Mooney's only lost one. But I think there was one week where Mooney, FBA, and Trinity all lost. Now, in the grand scheme of things, not a big deal. They play good schedules. The flip side of that is when you're trying to put a ranking together, it's really difficult.
And I'm doing 10 teams. I know you're doing 5. I'm just trying to figure how the heck can we get 10 teams? And it's only what, 22, 23 teams in that classification. It's almost like a don't get me started.
Which is why, and that's a big reason why we do 5 is just, you don't have the same body of teams and programs to choose from, but.
Oh, it's one of those that we've been saying the last couple of years.
You're doing a job since you have to go all the way down to 10.
Yeah, it's going to be another time.
Just
yeah. Well, John, we're going to wrap it up here. I focus on recruiting the most, and we talked about the guys that really stand out in the state that obviously they got their offers, they got their commitments. Obviously, Jeremiah's kind of toying with maybe other Florida schools, but don't want to jump into that realm. Who's a player, and I know this is putting you on the spot. This isn't something that you're like, hey, I got this written down. I got this nice soliloquy I'm going to go over. But who is somebody that's underrated that you feel like you saw in the first half of the season that wasn't somebody you expected? Like you were kind of like, whoa, when I saw him in person, he's better than what I thought.
I don't know if it's unexpected, but the 2 guys that I think are the most underrated that I've seen this year, because so much of what we do is guys that, top 100, top 150. So I'm just going to be honest, that has most of my attention. I'm looking at the whole game, but the guys that I'm looking for, Jaden Parrish at Atlantic, the linebacker headed to Florida State. And I think they're going to have some competition down the stretch. I think he's phenomenal. I think if he's in Miami, he's a 4-star. I think he's that good. He's a guy that I feel like influences the game in a lot of different ways. And he's got the whole package. He had probably the biggest hit I've heard all year. And I want to say, I heard the hit. You saw it, but it was one of those where the whole crowd reacted to the sound.
Ooh.
It was just, and it wasn't like a helmet to helmet. It was just pad on pad, and he just stuck him, and it's beautiful. The other one is a guy you saw, and I think you'd probably agree with me, Preston Watson at Seminole.
Oh yeah.
If he's or 2 taller, if he's in that 6'3.5", 6'4" range, he's a 4-star pushing the top echelon of 4-stars. Just high motor kid, constantly in the backfield. There was a couple times where he just absolutely destroyed Brady Hart, which does not happen a lot. I mean, just destroyed him. He had an incomplete pass that even Duke, he's committed to Duke, and their D-line coach was there, and he goes, was that a forced fumble, or was that an incomplete pass? And you don't know, because Preston just killed the quarterback to such a degree that, one, you're kind of wondering, get up, and then 2, oh, the ball's out. It's one of those where it's like, just a clean but completely violent hit. He is a guy to me, I put him in the same conversation with Sincere Edwards at Wekiva.
Yeah.
Not the tallest guy on the planet, but a hard-nosed, high-motor, physical, clean, violent player that you don't want to have to try to block for 4 quarters. I've been so impressed with Preston. I've seen him twice now. He's made monster plays in both games, and I know they came up short against Cocoa. Preston's not the reason why they lost that game. He's just he's so much fun to watch. Duke is getting an absolute steal. Their coach actually said to me, "Hey, can you stop posting videos of him?" Because somebody's going to figure out, hey, look, yeah, he's not 6'4", but oh my gosh, and I'm really excited to see what he does at Duke, really in multiple respects, both the academics and the athletics. I think he's going to be I think it's a great fit for him.
Yeah, definitely someone, when you pointed him out to me, I said he is forcing Brady to get outside that pocket, because when you're a quarterback like Brady, you want to step up into it. Preston's not letting you. He's like, you're going to have to go elsewhere, or I'm just going to catch you. So one or the other's happening. And when you like that.
There were a lot of plays where Brady did not look comfortable in the first half. And part of that is there's just not a lot of D linemen who like him. There's not a lot of guys who are, if Preston wants to, he can just beat you with a bull rush.
Right.
The thing special about him, and I've always said this, I don't know if you agree with this or not. I love guys that use technique when they don't have to. And most elite players in high school don't have to use technique. They're just better than you. And so they can just run around you or they can just run through you and they don't have to use technique. You watch Preston, he's using technique even though he doesn't have to, because that's kind of how he's trained himself. Love guys like that do the little things right to make them better, because when they get to college, they're going to have to do it or they're never going to find the field. And that's everybody. Everybody in college is really good. So, the guys that use technique, those that look at and go, okay, I think they have a really good chance to succeed because they're doing the right things now. And he's one of those guys for sure.
Well, John, we went over a lot of the state top recruits, guys you think are kind of being underrated. We're going to end it on that. John, thank you so much once again for coming on with me. And I got to get you on again. You'll be the first person for 3 times because, we got to talk about the playoffs. Going to be a while, but
yeah,
I was like, I had to bring out the gym more. I know it's a little early, but had to bring out his impression. I like to do some impressions every now and again. So that's John Santucci, USA Today Network. John, thank you again, and we're gonna have him back. Obviously, always talking all about the state. So that is the Coastal episode 15. We will catch you guys next time for episode 16.